Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and I'm recording remotely because currently I'm enjoying the end of summer. So I'm out of town watching the Steelers game on TV like the rest of yins and getting to see some preseason action, you know, where the wins and losses and the scores and everything else doesn't matter. But man, the Steelers look pretty sharp. The team looks rather deep, and the first offensive series, we talked about this. We didn't want Kenny Pickett to play too long in this game, and there were certain players we felt that needed to have a certain performance, a certain level of performance in order to maybe attain a roster spot. So there were some of the defensive players who started weren't necessarily your normal starters. So no TJ Watt, you didn't have Minka Fitzpatrick, you didn't have Cam Hayward. A lot of those guys weren't out there. Larry Ogunjobi, for example. So you ended up with Kenny Robinson playing safety. We talked about Luke Barku at corner. And it was really good to see some of those players get some action in this game, especially early on. Some other, talking about varsity and junior varsity performances and who's playing against who. But let me tell you, that first drive, and I understand it's not the full complement of everything, but the Pittsburgh Steelers offense was pretty close to on the money as far as full complement to start this game. You had Kenny Pickett out there with Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Allen Robinson, Darnell Washington was out there a little bit with the starting offensive line, Najee Harris. Not a whole lot out of Najee, actually. Najee, not even a carry, right? And then you had Jaylen Warren, 3 carries, 13 yards. See, it's still a 4.3 average. It doesn't seem like a whole lot, but there were some really positive things. Of course, Anthony McFarland Jr. making a case to be on the roster as well, running in for a 14-yard touchdown. A lot of good things, but everyone's going to remember that Kenny Pickett finds George Pickens for 33 yards for a touchdown on that first drive, and you had Pickett finish his evening early, 6 of 7, completed 85.7% of his passes. Makes a lot of sense. There was only the one errant pass that he had. Didn't get sacked. He had the touchdown pass, 147.9 quarterback rating on the evening. Looked a lot sharper than Mitchell Trubisky. And let me tell you, Mason Rudolph, not looking too bad. I mean, there were some spots. He was running for his life. He was getting hit. A lot of backup and third string offensive linemen. We talked about performances too. Kendrick Green, if he's going to be the backup center, can't make that bad snap. And he had a few of those too in his rookie season. Oh, man, I'll tell you, the hype train to have him play at fullback and make the roster also as a versatile backup center, offensive lineman, or guard, it's going to be pretty tough. I'm going to be kind of interested in seeing maybe if the Steelers end up looking to trade someone, let's say Kevin Dotson, for example. But Kenny Pickett, very sharp on the day. Like I said, Jaylen Warren, as you can see in that picture, also picking up very good in pass protection. There was a really nice little run. I think it was Warren that broke out. Darnell Washington kind of cut inside. And I wanted to say, was it Broderick Jones? It might have been Broderick Jones. Allen Robinson off the edge, wide receiver, kind of playing in the slot. And he got a lot of those early reps. Of course, he should have as kind of the wide receiver 3, the slot receiver as that veteran player. You didn't really see much else other than Robinson come out there for a few blocks. But I was very impressed overall with that first drive. Like I said, I wanted to see something where they came out 5-6 years ago with Ben Roethlisberger and everybody, Antonio Brown still on the roster. They came out like in a preseason game against the Saints with all the starters, Lev Bell, the whole 9 yards, and they just smashed them on the opening drive and then went and sat down and got some water, and that's all you needed to do. I'm still a little concerned, though, about some other areas. Offensively, backups, like I said, Mason's at this point where he's going to come into a game cold pretty much and with whoever, and he's going to do, I think, an adequate job. He's going to be at least an adequate quarterback 3. Mitch should still be able to give you the same kind of variety, so to speak, because Mason doesn't have the legs or the same kind of athleticism, I should say. They're all athletes. They're in the NFL. They're pros, right? But Mitch Trubisky is a mobile quarterback. Kenny Pickett's a mobile quarterback. Mason Rudolph will never be thought of as a mobile quarterback, despite carrying the ball a few times. He had a nice 15-yard long run for a first down, much to his credit, right? So, but Mitch Trubisky, 4 pass attempts. He's 1 of 4. Threw the pick. He had a 0 rating. I don't want to get into stats chasing, but it is what it is. It was pretty ugly. And it wasn't like what we were looking at when you saw the connection that we've been talking about all summer between Kenny Pickett and George Pickens. Now, granted, Mitch Trubisky isn't out there with the same full complement of players, so I'll give him a little bit of a pass on that, but the one shot that he took finally ended up not working in his favor. So, but I don't want to say he's necessarily in jeopardy. Mason finishes his day sub 60% completed, 132 yards, 124.3 quarterback rating. He had the touchdown pass deep to Kelvin Austin. What was that? 67 yards. And now everybody that's doubted Kelvin Austin, now you get to see the truth, right? You got to see it right in front of your very eyes. That's a varsity play against JV guys. Kelvin Austin is a name that's going to be on the rise throughout this season. He's a guy, he offers something the Steelers don't have with their other receivers, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Allen Robinson. They don't have 4.3 speed, 4.3 40 speed. So Kelvin Austin also coming off the edge. He ran a couple of times. He had a 17-yard long in this game as well. But the few catches that he did have, like I said, that's 67-yarder. He had some that didn't go his way. One was in dirt. You have a little bit of that. Wait until you get Kenny with this guy. You're going to be absolutely amazed. As for some of the other skill position players, Cody White, I didn't feel had the best showing in this game. The one, pretty much like the same thing I was talking about. He had the ball kind of almost ripped from him. Not exactly the same thing that happened with Pickett to Cody White in training camp, where Joey Porter Jr., who did not participate in this game as well, got picked off, right, by Joey Porter Jr. And I said, Joey Porter made a very nice play. I'm trying to think of the Bucs corner that was watching White, and he ended up picking off Mitch Trubisky, and some of that was still on Cody White. And then later on, he had like a one that was a drop. Charlie Batch is on the color with Bob Pompiani, the local guys, the local broadcast, if you got to see the Steelers feed. And Batch wasn't happy. He says, these are the ones that the quarterbacks say, you got to catch those. And you have a very deep wide receiver group. And I mean, they're still trying to trial if Gunnar Olszewski's going to be around. But this was very kind of telling to me, too, that they didn't have Kelvin Austin and Gunnar Olszewski are 1 and 2 on this depth chart. We talked about this myself in Flash as sort of the pregame and who needed to have big games type of deal. Jordan Byrd ends up out there as the first guy, as the first returner. So I thought that was pretty interesting and something to look out for, because I do think that he could find himself a spot on this team. You don't want to pay attention to the depth charts and everything else like that. You got to kind of just take it with a grain of salt as to who's the ones, who's the twos. They were talking about that with Broderick Jones and Dan Moore Jr. and et cetera, et cetera. So offensively for the Steelers, I think you just have such a variety in these games. I mean, there was a nice play by Connor Hayward here. You get a nice little play. I mean, Connor carried the ball. He caught a couple of passes, 24-yard long pass, moving the sticks too. So I really like that. Darnell Washington, more in a blocking role. I mean, they found him. He was playing deep into the third quarter as well, so that was kind of interesting. You start to get into some of the other players like Greg Bell running the ball, and there's just there's not a whole lot that's there, you know what I mean? And so, and I mean, not everything was super successful in the Steelers drives. The first drive, they went with pass, pass, pass. Got Kenny started real early. You saw the accuracy, you saw the decisiveness. Then they went run, run, and it's like, okay, this is the Matt Canada pattern. So, but they ran the ball like at first with Mitch Trubisky, and pretty much that's how they had any sort of success with Mitch Trubisky in there, was just running the football. So I was trying to pull up like some of the specific plays here just to kind of give you a little bit of an idea. Oh, the actual play-by-play. Let me see. Mitch Trubisky, yeah, that was the pick. So he would have came in just before this. Watching Baker Mayfield, too. I mean, the Steelers' defense did okay. It was kind of just the shell of itself. Baker was 8 of 9, and he had the TD, too. So he was highly rated in this game. Kyle Trask, not so much. So I think if there's any sort of quarterback competition there for the opposition in Tampa Bay, you kind of get an idea of where that is heading. Maybe a little bit of redemption. Well, this is his maybe last chance at redemption, as we were talking about, for Baker Mayfield, a guy who, like, you know, the Steelers should know pretty well, but it's not like the guys that were in the game would have known him very well. So let me try. I'm still trying to find this here. Okay, it was Anthony McFarland, Mitch Trubisky incomplete on 3rd and 6, and that was that first drive. It was like run. Now he like throws the ball, and Baker Mayfield touchdown, Mitch Trubisky interception. Mitch Trubisky, so first is the left end, Kelvin Austin, 17 yards, Mitch Trubisky incomplete. Kelvin Austin left end for 6 yards. Mitch Trubisky complete to Connor Hayward. Anthony McFarland with the 14-yard touchdown run. McFarland's looked really good too. If I'm going to say Kelvin Austin offers something to the wide receivers group that the others don't have, so does Anthony McFarland. A completely different type of change of pace. I mean, he really looks like he's grown as a player. It's going to be tough. He was already a practice squad guy, but entering year 3. A lot of roster spots up for grabs. Let me talk about BT Potter playing in place of Chris Boswell as the kicker. Not too bad. I know he had the jitters on that first extra point, and he dinks it and off the post. But the rest of the game, I thought he looked pretty sharp. He's going to put some stuff on tape. Remember, Chris Boswell didn't have the strongest year last year. He's now in his early 30s, so you're going to have to keep that in mind. I'm not going to say that it's an actual battle between Potter, but this is like one of the ACC's top kickers. You had a lot of the backups, Braden Mann and guys like that. So punting, and Braden Mann's punting, and that first punt wasn't very good, but Potter's putting some tape out there. He might be one of these guys you get to call up in case Chris Boswell ends up being dinged or injured or ill, and those things have happened. Yeah, the Steelers, you know, they weren't used to this when it was Sean Sweesham. At least I wasn't. That guy was an Iron Man up until that Hall of Fame game, and Canton took away his career. So I think I'm going to jump over to the defense real quick, because it's just in terms of the players, and I'm trying to think if there was really any, like, the real negative for me was Mitch Trubisky. Kendrick Green, I felt really bad for him after everything that we've had to say is nothing but positive. You have that flub, and that just kind of like, I don't know, this is a game setting for a guy who started in the NFL, and a guy who's, you know, year 3 player, veteran player, shouldn't be committing these and the penalty, and the holding penalty too. It's just pile on for Kendrick Green Day after all the positivity, and it's just like, man, here's the shovel, dig your own hole, dude. So maybe he can climb out of this, but that was not a good day in the office for him. You jump over to the Steelers defense, and there were some positive things to take a look at, and of course one of those was, I don't understand. I know there's a point of emphasis that's out there with officiating, but Quan Alexander, number one, I forgot to mention, I may have mentioned, the Kiss of Death is wearing the same number as somebody else already on the roster. Dual rostered numbers. He shares his with Anthony McFarland Jr. Quan Alexander wearing 26. The old Rod Woodson number, which is the GOAT. I don't like that being reissued, but, you know, sometimes it is what it is. There's only so many numbers you can give out. That's an aside. Quan made this really great play. That whole touchdown drive with Baker Mayfield shouldn't have even happened, but there you go. There's a penalty, and I'm not really sure what the officials saw there. It wasn't like Kendrick Green where there were like 4 flags that were thrown in. But Quan looks really good. Landon Roberts that starts this game. They were kind of shuffling the guys along with Cole Holcomb. I thought there was some good coverage in the back too on some of this. You notice Baker really had to move around and he couldn't find any open wide receivers. So that really like behooves guys like James Pierre, who played a lot of snaps, had a lot of tackles in this game. Kenny Robinson trying to find a spot on this roster. Marcus Golden looked good too. I mean, he didn't play a whole lot in his veteran status, but he got in the backfield as well. Nick Kwiatkowski ended up having a sack at one point here. Nick Herbig, of course, sack machine in this game. I believe 1.5 sacks. Later in the game, like a lot of this got messy. Quincy Roche ends up getting a sack as well, but Nick Herbig looked really good. This is what we had saw in camp, and he had like the 1.5 sack with the Marvin Leal. Keanu Benton, a dude. Now one drive, like he was a run stuffer, tackle for loss, and then the one was it a sack or was it just another tackle for loss? But he was in the backfield. I'm trying to remember the exact play that Pompiani actually gave credit to Isaiah Loudermilk. And you'll remember if you watched the Steelers feed, they were saying this, but this was all the penetration from Benton. He pushed the guard that was up on him, hat on hat, at least 5 yards deep off the initial push. Absolutely loving Keanu Benton. I can't get enough of him. Or as they're saying, he kept calling him Mount Washington. At least introduce Darnell Washington and say his nickname's Mount Washington or Washington, as I think Craig Wolfley was saying on Steelers.com on one of the podcasts or the Steelers Nation Radio. Washington, got to put the Yinzer slang on it. I love it. But Keanu Benton, absolutely like incredible, man. It's a really incredible showing. Again, where you have the varsity kind of plays against junior varsities, and I think Loudermilk ends up getting in there. Maybe statistically, I'm trying to look. No, he didn't get any kind of half sack or anything like that. Nor did Benton. But they ended up stopping. They ended up stopping that drive just as they needed to do, and that's something that we haven't seen a lot of. Is like tackles for loss and stuffing the run. And then there was the other play. I think the one I'm getting too conflated here, but there was definitely one where Keanu Benton gets in there. And then the fourth down play where Tampa Bay goes to go for it on 4th and 1. This was in the second quarter, I believe. Still with Baker Mayfield out there. They run Keyshawn Vaughn a couple of times. He gets stopped by Benton and Loudermilk. Then he had a no gain with the Marvin Leal and Kenny Robinson up in there. And then Benton, this was the play where Benton ends up coming in and stuffing and pushing that guard back 5 yards into the backfield. And Keyshawn Vaughn just gets tackled for a loss, -3. It was Isaiah Loudermilk credited officially, but man, not to Marvin Leal, to Marvin Leal in the previous play, but Keanu Benton, just absolutely a dude, makes a phenomenal play there. So I'm very impressed with the way that the defense came together. I thought that team overall looked pretty sharp. And for just a preseason game, and they're playing in a little bit warmer climate down in Tampa, I was overall very much impressed. I liked seeing Calvin Austin. He's one of my winners from this game. Of course, you could give it to Kenny and George Pickens, but my absolute winners from this game, Calvin Austin, Keanu Benton, as I think he's going to win this starting nose tackle job. And I liked seeing Allen Robinson and Darnell Washington out there making a few of these blocks, and I believe that's just I thought it was pretty good. Not a lot I could say, like when it comes to guys like Tanner Morgan. Tanner Morgan barely had any prep or any kind of like real reps in camp. So when he was out there, was this end of third quarter, beginning of fourth quarter, not a whole lot to talk about there, unfortunately, with Tanner. There wasn't a whole lot. There's not a whole lot to say, just because his film, I don't think, is going to win him a job. This isn't Duck Hodges all over again. Duck, at least, Ben gave some veteran days. Duck got some snaps, was able to show that he could hang, that he could play in the league. Josh Dobbs, similar in some aspects. You know, he was the backup and got the start, and he had a real command of everything. And even Mason in the preseason, for that matter. These weren't like really bad performances like you had in the past, like Landry Jones rookie year, or who else can I think of in the preseason, like Dustin Vaughn or somebody like that. So I was overall impressed with the coaching staff and their ability to get this team up to snuff. And we'll see what ends up happening next. Pittsburgh Steelers play at home against the Buffalo Bills here in a little more, about a week. So they're gonna have a Saturday game at Acrisure Stadium, and we'll see if it's more of a dress rehearsal. Only 3 preseason games now to go, and then after that, that's it, folks. So that'll do it for me. My name is Joe Kuzma. Thank you for joining me outside of the SCU studios for a little bit of post-game talk with the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. First preseason game now in the books. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. And thank you wherever you're watching or listening from. We'll be back with you later this week with some more thoughts about what's going on in training camp, a little bit of like a preview for the next game, and maybe some predictions on who's on the bubble to make this roster for sure, based on what we saw here, perhaps leading into the next game. A lot of big decisions. Steelers are deep in a lot of positions too, so stay tuned for that. Until next time, my name's Joe. I encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.